The reason most people get stuck, if you will, is because of themselves. They need to get out of the way. And once they get out of the way and stop trying, that's what I get this a lot. I'll hear people say, well, I try to meditate and I can't. I said, well, that's the problem. You're trying.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I am your humble servant and seafood, Taoist Master San Qing. And I want to welcome to the podcast today an incredible beam of light, a master of many things. Humility is one of the massive ones, but frequently you are able to exhibit what is necessary to realize that this incredible being has so much to offer in the space of spiritual guidance, enlightenment, and energy healing. I want to welcome to the podcast Kathleen Johnson. How are you?
I'm great, son. Thank you so much for having me. I'm just so excited to be here.
Yes, it's always this conversation that gets people all fired up. I equate this to more than a conversation. It's an experience for anyone witnessing this, because we're creating this unified state, and the evidence is in the substance. The evidence is in the experience, and the visceral, kinesthetic, somatic response that basically the observer is having. Mm-hmm. And that becomes more evident as we unify and we commune within this conversation. It will become more and more clear to the audience what we're doing here. So I'm very grateful to have you here. I would love to start with just an abbreviated version of how you got here.
Oh, abbreviated. All right. I've had a bit of a circuitous route to get to where I am. I think that's true of most people, but mine feels like it might have been a little bumpier than some. My first career was in law enforcement. I spent more than 2 decades in law enforcement. So obviously what I do now is a pretty sharp departure from that. But interestingly enough, my time in law enforcement was what awakened my desire to reach out in a different way, to be of help. I went into law enforcement to be of help. That was my idea. Oh, this sounds cool. This sounds like I could be of help, right? And when I was in that space of law enforcement, I began to realize that I was developing a deep compassion for not only the victims and the witnesses of crimes and acts of, against people, but also for those that committed those crimes. And that surprised me in a way, because what law enforcement is all about, let's get the bad guys off the streets, right? And it surprised me, but I went with it. I was okay. I began to see that glimmer of humanity in everything and everyone I came into contact with. And then, as I was being more comfortable in that role, I received a diagnosis of a chronic ailment, which forced me to take an early retirement. And at that time, I thought this was probably the worst thing that could have ever happened to me, right? I was married. I had 4 young sons at the time, and it was a huge blow in many ways. So I picked up the pieces, I worked through it, and it was then that I got into learning about past life work. It was a chance remark from a colleague, and I say chance in air quotes, right? That put me on that path to learn more about past life regression. Ultimately, I found a teacher and a mentor who guided me into regressions, and ultimately I trained with her. And then I found Reiki. It was sort of a progression, I guess. Everything started to fall into place. It felt like dominoes. Reiki was the vehicle that really launched me onto my spiritual path. I had always been a person who was aware of spirit, but I was raised in a pretty strict Catholic environment, so that had its limits, obviously. And as I found Reiki and got more into Reiki and realized that this is what I want to do, this is how I can be of service, because it was all about being of service for me. And as I delved deeper into that, spirit just opened up. I was guided to start working with crystals. I was guided to offer mentoring and to infuse past life work into my Reiki practice. And it just all blended and merged and coalesced into what I do today. And it's still evolving. It does not stay the same. The constant, and the only constant is change, correct? So I look forward to what's next. I really do. It's exciting because I never know what I'm going to be guided to next. And that is an abbreviated version. I could go on for a long time, but I won't.
Well, it's so exciting, the self-evidence, the within a Taoist path, we start with inquiry, and then contemplation. Curiosity leads to hopium. Hopium, when nurtured, blossoms into a belief system, and that belief system is only met with experiential moments, the moments that are validated by your own truth, your own realization. And furthermore, if you can transcend it, as I think you mentioned, this is what we call bringing immortality, crystallizing it into this material state. That's a Taoist path of self-realization, which creates excitement. It creates every day as a new day, an opportunity to remember who you are, return. And I think that you shared at the beginning of this conversation with a very heightened level of awareness that for a Taoist, that's what it is. You will find yourself in servitude and selflessness, and that is the very action or inaction that is the default. You want for nothing, you are whole.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it has always been about being of service. And one of the things I tell my clients is that's the reason we're here, to be of service. And that has different meanings for every person. Everyone has a different idea of what being of service is. And I see being of service as anything. A smile at a stranger, striking up a conversation with someone who may look like they need a good word. Um, Picking trash up off the ground, not squashing a bug on the pavement. That is being of service. It doesn't have to be anything grand or spectacular. It is the actions and the choices we make in our everyday lives that really, really matter. Because when we choose to be of service, and in so doing, we're choosing kindness, aren't we? We're choosing compassion. We are that energy that we are emanating ripples infinitely into the universe. It's there, and it affects everyone and everything in its path.
Mm.
So it just, to me, it's being of service. To me, is, to use an old term, a no-brainer. It, why wouldn't you want to be of service? I know that sounds very naive, but it's still a bit of a puzzle for me to figure out why we don't do this more often.
Mm. Yeah, it's like a default of part of the self-realization of the human condition is to realize the potential, the true secret source, the enter point of realization is sentience. And then, of course, to discover your superpower, which is empathy. And that comes from returning to who you are and remembering this
Right.
unified state, returning to whole in definition is healing. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the
Absolutely.
magic that the human condition can present itself, or furthermore, it can create a problematic contemplation that will end in, a mundane discontent story of, frustration, depression. All these emotions are part of the secret sauce, right? But look at Reiki, for example, when you mention Reiki, you're a Reiki master. This is kind of like the dualistic sort of evidence of this material state is this electromagnetism. And furthermore, people try to decipher it, go through the labyrinth, right? And find that your mission, if you choose to accept it, Ethan Hunt, is to find that vertical point. How do you apply that within Reiki, and what has been some of the effects of this, ancient mastery of energy potential for you?
Oh, Reiki is one of the best gifts Spirit has given me. Seriously, it has been nothing short of amazing. And you make a good point about wanting that. You touched on that a moment ago about the proof and the external. Of course, Reiki as a practice is applied externally to clients, but I think for many people that is necessary. That is a necessary part of their growth and their coming to understand what it means to be whole and what it means to be in balance. And Reiki is all about balance. One of the things I have come to know and love about this energy is how well it balances the energy of the folks I'm working with. And I get comments about that all the time. And remaining in balance, you refer to the 0 point, right? It's the balance. I think of it as balance.
Yeah, I don't think I mentioned it today, but that's absolutely a physics terminology for said evidence of the harmonious, frequency, right? The resonance. But that's very interesting. I mentioned it in an earlier podcast, but you must have just picked up on that because I haven't mentioned it today, which is
that's interesting. I thought you did. That's so strange. I heard it in my head.
Yeah. Well, you heard it. This is the power of the paranormal. The superhuman is really the supernatural, the supernormal, and this is what we're experiencing. That's refreshing. I love it.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. So Reiki provides that. It provides that balance. It helps to clear energies that are no longer serving. And it does all these things effortlessly. All that is required is an intention and an openness to the energy. Seriously, that's it. No special tools, no, rabbit out of the hat, and nothing like that. It's a very simple practice. It's simply beautiful and beautifully simple, as I have been known to say. And you also touched upon the proof a moment ago. And this is something that when I was teaching. I no longer teach. I've been guided to work individually with clients at this time. When I was teaching, people would always, well, how do I know it's working? And, they always wanted this external validation that it was working and the proof. And there is a group out there now, it's the Center for Reiki Research, that does scientific experiments as to the benefits of Reiki done according to the scientific method, okay? Which is fine. I have no problem with that. But I feel as I've journeyed on this path for quite some time, I feel that it doesn't require proof. There are some things that simply do not need to be understood, right? We don't need to have an explanation for everything. I think it is self-explanatory. Someone who has experienced a Reiki session, how they feel afterward is all the proof you need. How they move forward in their day, how they experience the rest of their time going forward after that session is all the proof I need. And I think our almost obsession with it's got to have, where's the proof? Where's the proof? I think some things are just meant to be a mystery, and I actually love that. And Reiki is one of those things. It's simply beautiful and beautifully simple, and that's all I need to know. It works. I've done thousands and thousands of sessions. It works. So
I think you're touching on the past life regression mastery that you shared with many people over your lifetime. I would say and offer potentially that you were a Taoist in a past life, because the evidence of this symbiotic relationship within yin and yang is the very substance of this reality. And
mhm.
so you're either moving the needle one way or the other. I would say the reason for evidence, and I always say self-evident, self-realized, is to move past the psychoses or the limitation of you call the finite mind. It's
Mhm.
bankrupt. There's nothing there. Yet human condition, introspective, analytical position leads you to dismiss it because there's this separation over the test of human history where things are now mind, body, spirit. They're not
Mhm.
unified. They're not whole. They are identified as separate. So you, as someone who identifies as the flesh and blood that looks back at you in the mirror as mortal, is the very distraction, as my dear friend, the Buddhist monk, would call the dukkha, the distortion that limits your ability to access this present moment, which in turn is the evidence of the unified state of healing.
Mhm.
Healing will become evident anytime I've ever witnessed anything physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually awakened within anyone. And my goodness, over 36 years, I've witnessed so many physical healings. You name it, I've seen it. My first crash course was gangrenous flesh turning back to pink in color in 40 minutes. And I've seen bones fuse, gashes seal before my very eyes, tumors disappear. You name it, I've seen it. That's just how it is. But that
Mhm.
is the potential. But I have also looked at this very much like you with a childlike state. I accept everything at face value. There is nothing more than this present moment. It's so magical. It's so enriching that we return to this unified state. And some people would refer to it as love. Yet love is problematic in of itself until otherwise noted, due to the subjective potential of that definition for the seeker. We have to sort of raise the bar for, move the goalpost for the person that's looking for this self-realization. And I believe that you're dead on, witnessing this over almost 40 years. The reality is that, guess what? We are past the zeros and ones and the scientific experiments to determine that we are now in a new age of experiential moment. It is the thing,
Yes.
not
Mhm.
give me the data and you tell me the universe is constructed within the very subatomic particles of my physical flesh.
Right.
That means nothing to me. I want to
Mhm.
accept. I'm a Pepsi challenge guy from the 80s. I'll take, I'll take the Pepsi challenge with anyone. I'll do the taste test with anyone. Show me what it is you're experiencing. You master that frequency that is a resonance, and really you're being able to hold that. Having worked with thousands of people over your lifetime, the reality is you're holding that resonance. So you step into that, and the whole of mirrors effect of the universe is to mimic and replicate that. So when someone witnesses your frequency or embodies it or experiences it, aha, I remember who I am. I remember this whole state. That is the purpose of this selflessness and servitude that you speak of. Ultimately, that is the path of a Taoist seeker, is to be an ambassador to planet Earth, to raise the consciousness of humanity and return them to their secret source, the superpower of empathy. And the more and more incredible beings like yourself and people like myself that teach the wisdom, they will find it. It will be self-evident,
Yes.
and it will go beyond the zeros and ones. And oh well, I didn't see this, or what's your evidence? And I've seen it all, but I also have this incredible obsession with having conversations with physicists that are completely perplexed with what they experience. If
Mhm.
I
Right.
take my arm and drive a skewer through it, pull it out, and there's no entry or exit point, and someone goes, what the they literally have adjectives, because
Right.
that's the present moment, and that's all you need. Yet you have to be in a state of whole. That means that from a Taoist perspective, this is where I think it correlates, and it's so magnificent, the indigenous practices, because they all, in my opinion, they all return to this knowing, and the knowing is this wholeness, and it is, vibratory, frequential. The energy, which is the currency of this state, presents itself, and if you can hold that resonance, then the old expression, "Oh yes, it will be yours," or "Yes, it will,"
Mhm.
show itself. And when
Right.
holding that, the said evidence is servitude and selflessness. You cannot fight it. It just is what it is. You want for nothing, and you offer everything. That's how it works, in
Right.
my opinion. And I see it over and over again.
I
And
bet you do.
I
Yeah.
really, I really am so grateful for your messaging, your insight, and your teaching, because I truly believe it aligns with the things that I've witnessed personally in my own experience. That
Hmm.
gives you the evidence. That's all you need.
Hmm. Agreed. It's self-evident as far as I'm concerned. The only I do like to say though, for those who are interested in the data, what I have learned is it will serve to bring folks into the fold who may have been skeptics. And that I appreciate, right? So it does have its uses. I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So yeah, I have come across that. I wouldn't say all the time, but more than once, where people will say, "Oh, I was reading about this, and I'm just so curious now." And okay, please come in, make yourself comfortable. And so that I am very grateful for. It
Mm.
does serve a purpose.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think mastered states like Reiki or Qigong. I teach people Nigong, which is a little bit more of a different sort of inverted realization of energy potential. It's all the same stuff, but you get deeper and find more evidence through your own practices and cultivation.
Hmm.
But in Taoism, we call it Nidan, internal alchemy, revealing Nigong, the internal power that lies within everything. There is a center point, that symbiotic relationship between yin and yang. Yin is the absorption of all colors, yang is the admission of all colors. And
Hmm.
in the center, you find what we call the primordial mother, which is creation, it's everything. And from
Yes.
that is unified. And then you get into the secret source where, someone by the name of Bruce Lee back in the 70s coined it as the flow of Wu Wei, effortless action, effortless effort, which I believe everyone experiences. You find your own flow, your own desire, your own spark of divinity. And, whether it comes through Reiki teaching or Taoist alchemy, the way it returns you to your knowing. And that's the most important thing. Your self evidence of knowing is all that's important. It doesn't require your participation. And
That's
people are like, what,
correct.
is, what do you mean? It doesn't. It means that your personality, your ego, your finite mind is not required to return to whole. And
Hmm.
there is nothing more powerful than the potency of the now moment, which is no place, no person, no thing. I've never witnessed anything so profound. If I'm in a state where I'm calling my angels in, I need 3 incense, I'm sitting down in the lotus position. That doesn't happen. The now moment is the now moment, and that's when the secret source is revealed, in my opinion.
Hmm. Right. Agreed. Absolutely. So yeah, it's I was going to say something about Reiki again, that one of the things I love about it, there are many things I love about it, as you can probably tell, but it is not belief dependent, which touches on what you said. It's one of those things that if you say, "Oh, I don't believe in Reiki," okay, well, okay, it will work regardless. It does what it needs to do. It is what it is. It is going to work. And people have a hard time with that. Well, if I don't believe in it, why? How does it still work? And I give the example of gravity. Well, you could say you don't believe in gravity, right? But if you, jump off a cliff, you're going to fall. Gravity always wins. So it's the same type of thing. Saying that you don't believe something doesn't make it so.
Hmm.
And uh, so it's and when people finally get through that, that's when I see the glimmers of, oh, okay. And when I see that opening, it's a glorious moment. Those now moments where I see that opening, it's the reason I'm here. Let me just put it that way, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. It's your, if someone comes to you with an absolute truth, about face and run in the other direction. Your absolute truth is yours. It's
Mm-hmm.
not John Smith's, it's not Kathleen's, it's not mine. It's yours, and that can only come from the present moment and the experience that you're having to validate that. That's where I, love to have conversation with, psychologists that just sum it up to, psychosomatic response. Well, in definition, it is. It's
Mm-hmm.
what you perceive as psychological entering through the mind as a tuning fork and having a somatic visceral kinesthetic response. So yes, that's a paradox where you're screwing with someone. You're like, oh yes, you're experiencing it through your mind and you're feeling it through your body. Yes. I mean, I don't know what the problem is, but most people
Right.
will call that, a potential deficiency, a psychotic break, things of that nature. They're not referring to it as something that is a raised state of consciousness. And I think that's where they draw, psychology, and they drop it into the human condition and the human timeline back in the 1600s. And that's where we go awry in the Western world, because this is where you start separating things instead of realizing
Right.
you are me, I am you. And that's the
Right.
fundamental problem. And when you share people with these ancient energetic teachings, people remember, and they're like, I'm not referring to my intellect. I just feel it, and I know it to be true. It doesn't matter what you're saying. I can feel it right now. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the potency of these ancient practices is, let's enough of the words. We need to see it. We need to experience it for it to be true.
Right. Exactly. The experiential portion is the proof. If you need proof, that's it. Um, yeah, it really is. It is glorious when it happens. And there was something you said a moment ago that I can't quite bring back to my mind that I wanted to expand upon. Can you? What were you saying a few moments ago? That
Um,
it
uh,
was.
Everything to do with psychology.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. I am. I have a lot of training in psychology, mental health counseling, transpersonal psychology, um, and yeah, transpersonal psychology is amazing. And that was the one that really grabbed me, and it it doesn't separate, which I love. It's more about spirit acting upon the mind as opposed to the mind acting on its own or whatever, having a psychotic break. So it transpersonal psychology bridges those separations and brings them together, which is what they are. We use the term mind, body, spirit. I even have that on my website because people understand that, right? And to be honest, in full transparency, I was kind of in that place when I started my practice, still thinking in those terms. And I leave it there now because it people understand that,
It's a
and
carrot.
I'm
It's a crumb. You're Sherlock
yes,
Holmes. I mean, it gives
yes,
people the sort of like self-realized evidence that goes, okay, well, I want to start there. That's a
hmm
starting point, and this person
right,
is offering more. So let's start there. Yeah.
right. And but as I've so the mind body spirit, the mind body spirit connection, oh yay. But as I've journeyed on my path, I know, so it's just that clear cognizance. I know. I just know. I don't need any proof. I don't need anybody to tell me that I'm right or wrong. I know. I know that we're all one. We're connected, but more than that, we're one. We are one. That goes beyond connection. And that, to me, refers to everything in the universe, not just me and you and another person. It includes the plants, the animals, the entire planet, the entire cosmos. We're all one. We're all made from the same stuff. We have that spark. That spark of the divine is within each one of us. And that makes us one. So I know that. And it's one of the things that I like to discuss with clients. Some are already there at that point. I would say the majority, though, are still in the how do I bring this all together, or can I bring this all together? And so that's one of the things I enjoy working on. And what I've learned from working with clients for quite a few years is the reason most people get stuck, if you will, is because of themselves. They need to get out of the way. And once they get out of the way and stop trying, that's what I get this a lot. I'll hear people say, well, I try to meditate and I can't. I said, well, that's the problem. You're trying. Why don't you try? I just did it. See, we use that word a lot. Why don't you allow meditation? Allow it. Don't try. Because when we say the word try, to me, that introduces an element of fear, right? And fear constricts the energy. It doesn't open things up for easy flow. It tends to restrict and constrict. So I say, okay, work on allowing. And more often than not, that seems to help. And it's something that simple shift in perspective can really help people. And that's what I mean about getting out of your way, right? You're the one standing in your way. You are the obstacle, so that means you are the way. And yeah, so I hope that makes sense.
You bring up a great point in this contemporary spiritual journey. We define that as wordsmithing a little bit. This is also a formula for people's perception of information, and it's definitely been trampled on and exploited over the last 40 years by this guy by the name of Tony Robbins. So NLP is a great entry level into commandeering someone's attention and intention, and furthermore, this is where you start to transmute this, imbue the words that are coming out of your mouth with this source of divinity that has an effect and creates resonance and is returning everything that it engages with back to its original state, which is the evidence that is necessary. So, when you made a great point, try is nothing more than your unconscious telling you, I'm going to fail. It's evidence I will fail. That's the purpose. I'm already telling you I'm going to fail. So the next time you tell your friend John Smith, hey, look, I'm moving this weekend. Can you come and give me a hand? You and Johnny come out, and John will be like, you know what? I got a couple of things to do, but I'll try and make it over there. And then Monday comes around, you come to work, and you're like, hey, John, why didn't you turn up? I was waiting for you all day to help me move the furniture. I'm moving. Oh, I had things come up, mate. I did the best I could. And already in the unconscious dialogue, that's really the truth serum from your unconscious mind through your linguistics, you are telling me everything I need to know about you. I always give people this psychic 101. We can go deep into it, but let's start with something as simplistic as language. And it's telling you everything you need to know about that person and what their true belief system is through their wordsmithing.
Right. I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is something that has become more and more important to me in recent years, because words matter. Words are energy. We know that everything is energy without exception. Everything in the universe, the multiverse, whatever, it's energy. All, having different frequencies and different manifestations. But so keeping that in mind, that everything is energy, words matter. And I have made a conscious effort in the past, and there's try effort. I've made a conscious commitment, there we go, to elevating the words I choose, not just with clients, but in my daily life, to bring in those words that have a higher vibration, a higher frequency.
Mm-hmm.
Try is not one of them. Anything that introduces the element of fear is unnecessarily. We need fear, obviously. I'm not going to get into all that. We need it in our lives. I mean, it tells us to get out of the way of an oncoming bus. That's helpful. But when fear interferes with our growth and it becomes the overriding force in our lives, that's when it becomes a huge issue. So, choosing words carefully, wordsmithing, as you said, is, I think, incredibly important these days because people respond to the frequency, not just of who you are, but what you're saying, what's emanating from you that they can hear or see or somehow perceive with their senses. And if my words are creating elements of fear, it defeats the purpose as far as I'm concerned. So I think elevating one's words in their everyday dealings is, I think, in this day and age, and what we're trying to do here to continue moving humanity and the planet forward is super important. And yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that. It is important to me, and I have been committed to this in recent years.
Yeah, there's a certain sort of, how do I put it, personality that leads themselves to some of these techniques that I don't think are so virtuous in their nature. Yet, that you're speaking on, you know, the the currency of the human language, and
Mm-hmm.
how that is said evidence of yang, the emission of all colors. That's the reflection of the yin, which is the absorption of all colors. That's what you get in the material state. Most people become obsessed with it, and they put their foot on the gas, and the end result is mortality. And this is part of the trappings of you know energy healing. I always ask people, I have always all different types of personalities turn on my doorstep. Doctors of Chinese medicine, light workers, Reiki workers, Qigong workers, functional medicine doctors, psychologists, parapsychologists. The fundamental question I ask them is, how do you feel at the end of the day? Exhausted. I'm like, wow. Well, now you are very separate. You are equivalent to a Hallmark throwaway selling your soul, because you are now taking the essence, what we call Jing within Taoism, and that essence is the constitution of your physical body that is an anchor within this space, and you are siphoning it for every event. Attention intention creates energy. And if you are not whole and you are subject to emotional states, i.e., fear, you will create suggestibility. And so wherever your attention goes, the energy flows. And so
Right.
when you tune into that unified state of what we call the primordial mother, the center point, the vesicle of all things, you are not sacrificing your own energy potential. It is a universal state, which is abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. And that's where people kind of go wrong, and they become, a little jilted, and they get exhausted, and they get tired. And a lot of people have good intention. They go in, I want to be selfless, I want to help, I want to heal, and then they start, expending that, and it turns into, I am, I'm tired. I can't,
Mm-hmm.
I'm channeling. My channeling has to limit. It's very exhausting. I can only do it for a few minutes. Or if I'm doing energy healing specifically, which it all is energy healing, I'm finding evidence that I'm exhausted. I have to really protect myself from, I mean, if you are me and I am you, and we go back to that fear based, you are literally going to create one problematic circumstance or situation after another, because you are literally calling in that energy potential. And if you're working with someone else and your goal is to remove whatever that is in that person's energy field, i.e. physical body, you tend to take on the traits of those energy potentials because you're always limited in fear. You're walking in with fear and protection, which limits your ability to tune into the present moment. And so many people walk that path, and the evidence is mortality, which is tragic if you look at it from a pity standpoint, which I don't. I'm not really big on firing up victimhood, because you must empower yourself. You must realize the first point of healing is to be accountable for your behavior, not delusional. And you speak on the psychology aspect, and I find that fascinating because most people are very limited, and they believe that that's the driving force. 30 plus years ago, I would have someone that could potentially have a psychotic episode, be very delusional, traits of someone diagnosing them as schizophrenic, bipolar, whatever. They'd turn up on my doorstep, and a priest in 2 lineages of Taoism, I would perform an ancient indigenous practice. We call it an exorcism. Been doing it for a long time, and it just shows you evidence of an irregularity. Now, what it turns into on your lens of perception of reality is for you to decide. Now, if you believe in the boogeyman, well, the universe will show you what that means. It's like, well, what would it mean, the boogeyman? Well, you're saying that your requirement for your self-realization is that you believe in this lower frequential state that might be ominous, it might be dark, it might be evil. These are the construct that the universe will go, okay, here's the mirrored effect. This is what you're looking for. I will show you it as rippling effect to that. And so today, the same person that I would exercise a low frequential state and have them be self-realized and empowered and whole as one. Today, people will just wake up and they're channeling the Palladians, open up a YouTube channel and get 100,000 followers. It's a different new world order right now. And I think it's amazing because this is more evidence of self-realization.
Oh, absolutely. So much more. So much more. You touched on, I love the way you touched on the things that I really wanted to talk about. It's so cool. Self-care. We talked about being of service. The first one we need to be of service to is ourselves. Absolutely. Because how can we be of service if we are not tending to our unified self? And the answer is we can't. That is the first order of business. My guides have told me over and over again throughout the years is that your primary responsibility is yourself. And only then can you be of service to others, which is also a parallel primary responsibility. And as someone who tends to be kind of nurturing and thinking about others a lot, this was hard for me to come to terms with and start to implement. But I have. And I have been astounded by the difference that it makes. And would you talk about the person who says that they're exhausted at the end of the day? Yeah, that's what happens when you're not caring for yourself. You want to help others. You want to be of service. You want to do all these wonderful things for humanity and the planet. But what are you doing for yourself? It's one of the questions I always ask clients, especially new clients who come to me and, I'm trying to do, I took this class and that class, I got this certification. I go, wait, okay. And when they finally wind down, I say, I have a question. What are you doing for yourself? And most of them don't know what to say. Yeah. And then we go in that direction and we talk about it and we delve into it. And it is amazing how things can change when we start looking out for ourselves. It's selfish, but it's self-ish. You know, it's not selfish to the exclusion of others. It is selfish so that we can be of service to others as well as to ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, within Taoism, we call it the sacrifice. The ultimate sacrifice is being selfish to reveal selflessness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is where you merge into something that you believe you're going to lose. When you actually gain, you return to whole. And that's the apprehension of the finite mind, the intellect, where you're always about, well, what am I getting out of this? If I do this, I'm going to be deficient, when in actuality the paradox is you become whole. And so
Mm-hmm.
within Taoism, the reality is the way to walk is not the way. The name that is named is not the name. Tao is both named and nameless. And this we bring back to the lens of reality that we look at as a Taoist. Everything is a bellows. You're contracting and expanding at the same time. You're all things and nothing at the same time. And that is where you find your Sherlock to your Watson, and you are able to move through that labyrinth you call the finite mind, reveal it at the other end as perfection manifest, and it comes in that form. And it's so ancient, it's so ritualistic. It's the breath, and within that breath you find what we call the absorption of the riches. Between the breath in and the breath out, between yin and yang, once again, this symbiosis of this constant that is this material state, looking for unification from a dualistic perspective, you find that center point when you hold the breath. It's what we call accumulating the riches. And that's where you saturate the physical flesh with this at a subatomic level, and it will accumulate in what we define as the creation of the diamond of perfection within the womb of the primordial mother. More said evidence, and furthermore, if you take that from contemplation to self-realization, it would come in the form of a cycle in a 9 count, which is the highest point within Taoism. And within the universe, the uterus, you find, guess what? The 9. And that will show you its self evidence of magic as you create that seed, and then you create life. Nothing more powerful than that. And that life will show you that you are, from a polymath perspective, 1 or 0, which returns back to the bellows. And anyone who wants to go deeper on that, find their local polymath, do the numbers, crunch it out. That's why we are obsessed with that number as the highest point of ascension, because you can be all things or nothing at the same time. And that's where you have the option. You have an option. This is the consciousness, is the ability to stay there and hold that resonance so that it becomes repeatable. And you can move into that, and it's good to be you. All bets are off once you stay there. Oh my goodness, wow! And you know, a lot of my students say, "Well, I wanted to learn all these alchemical processes," and I'm like, "I'll teach you those." The fundamental issue with that is when I notice you become obsessed with one of them, whether it's like, you know,
Yes.
levitation or physical healing or whatever it is. I'll teach you it. You acquire that. It returns you to whole, but you'll see how much you're being distracted by your finite mind if you're just obsessed with that one part of the whole. And so when you ascend, the second you become whole, you're no longer even curious about it. You just move right along, and it continues
Mm-hmm.
to be a part of all things. And that's more self evidence of your own ascension.
Yes. Yes. And it's one of the challenges of the work I do, because I do have those clients who are chasing ascension, for lack of a better term, with the certifications and the trainings and the classes, and it's exhausting, and it gets very expensive as well. And I sometimes I have endless patience with them. I try anyway, because I am human as well. So I'm kind of, I'm trying to find that 0 point all the time. And it's such a it is such an obstacle And it's one of the challenges I face is having people understand, hopefully, that they're the obstacle, as I said a few minutes ago. And that they look at me like, huh? What? Yeah, yeah. Again, you're trying too hard. I'll say, slow down. Just take a breath. Instead of doing, just be. We're not human doings, we are human beings. Allow yourself to be and see how that works out for you. Maybe 10 minutes a day. Allow yourself to just be. Start slow, and that seems to help. So, but it can be challenging, very much so, but it's what I love about the work because if it was easy, I'd probably be bored. Right? I like a challenge, always have. I'll always take the more difficult way if I have choices somehow. I don't do it on purpose. It just seems to work out that way.
Yeah.
But it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, adversity is really the byproduct of being self-realized. You've got to test it a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
find what that means to you, and you know, if you use this, you know, human flesh and blood as an anchor, you need to test it. You need to absorb and realize resilience is a superpower also within the physical body, activating those first couple of energy centers from all indigenous practices. It literally is a kickoff to your own ascension. Is
Mm-hmm.
being able to apply that through further inquiry. You will find that it becomes effortless, and
Mm-hmm.
action, as we speak of it as a Taoist knowing, the Wu Wei, effortless action, effortless effort, is the paradox that screws with people's minds. But the truth is, breath is action. That's it. That's all you need. And so once you realize that, I always give people the contemplation of what I call the Pepsi challenge, the 72-hour challenge, to accept and allow all things. And what everyone finds is within 24 hours, their life becomes effortless. They're no longer gravitating to the same old mundane nonsense that would come in the form of drama, judgment, emotional, mental states that dictate their attention intention. They're like, whoa, hang on a second. You know, the idea that you come home after a hard day's work and, you know, have something as sobering as, you know, finding out that your partner is having an affair with someone else, or you lose your job, or you're having, you know, financial issues. These are all things that can be problematic and can be detrimental if you perceive them as that. And we're not talking about not realizing that these are first world problems when most people in the world can't even, you know, get a fresh or clean glass of water and a bowl of rice. We are in a completely world order that is beyond the normal for a majority of the world today. And that's really part of our selflessness, is observing that, acknowledging that, valuing that, and then contributing to helping them find what they need to be whole also. But, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that whole adversity, you know, it would be quite complex and difficult, as you put it, if, you know, and I've had this happen to many of my students, where someone comes home, they had no idea that their partner was having an affair with someone else, and then next minute their spirituality goes to the toilet because they're being faced with this injection of their finite mind, their personality, and it's not how they perceive it, because that's what they're feeding that in the back of their unconscious, quite frankly, consciously holding these truths within them as if no one else can find them. Yet the universe is listening intently to everything that you desire, or you don't want, or want in your reality, and it will be presented to you just like a genie in the bottle. And your crafting and your creation as a creator, as that is your default, is that with good there will be bad, if that's how you look at your reality. So you will find it. It's like, you know, I don't want that. Oh, all of a sudden it turns up on my doorstep. How interesting.
right. Yeah, that's the way it works. That's the way it works. So I know I'm not even sure where to go from here. I have so much I'd like to say, and I don't even know where to start.
Go ahead, say it. Say it to be so. There you go.
I just feel like I need to speak a little bit more about the whole how the unified healing, the unified individual, and how that happens. And I look at my clock and it's 1:11. One of my signals that spirit is with us.
Right,
One of many. One of many.
right.
Yes, yes. It's it really is it's a goal of mine, I suppose, to work with those people who are serious about their journey. I use the word journey, but it's okay. That's the buzzword, I guess. But people who are serious and really want to do the work, and that involves working on themselves first of all, and realizing that we are here for a reason. We chose to be here now. I know that. Again, claircognizance. I know that. We chose to be here now. You earlier mentioned something about being here and standing up for what we need to do. Is so true, and I feel that that is part of my path. I need to be here, working with these individuals in whatever way works for them, and to make them, not to make them, but to help them on their journey and to help them create the life they want and the the tools so they can be their authentic selves. Authenticity is another word that's used a lot today, but it's an important word because it's full of meaning, and it means something different to each person. To me, it's about being unified, living your unified life, mind, body, spirit, energy, whatever, all of it, bringing it all together in order to be of service. So that's a big order. And sometimes I think, wow, why did you sign up for this again? I'll ask myself. And I did, apparently. But it is enormously, enormously fulfilling. I do feel that what I do with clients can help them. And it is an honor for me to work with people. And the privilege of doing this work does not escape me, believe me. It is a privilege. And I'm always grateful for that, to have that privilege of working with others in such an intimate way and sharing so much of themselves with me that it's just it fills my soul. It absolutely fills my soul, and it always tells me that I'm definitely on the right path. And I try. Believe me, I have my moments that I am probably not, I'm not a Pollyanna. Let's just say that. But I have my moments. But honestly, working with others and allowing them to be who they are and to blossom into who they are meant to be is it's something that I am just astonished to be able to do and to have the privilege of doing. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, it's an interesting path how we about face and do a 180 for what we're doing in our lives. I mean, your own admission being involved in law enforcement and things of that nature. Were you a detective, a police officer, or?
I was a major crimes detective.
There you go. Look at that.
Yeah.
So, of course, the first question is, how did you find me? No, I'm just kidding. I
I want to know.
It's like, I thought I was better at that. But, I mean, this is a great example of observation of the human condition, right? So you would be trained in, body language and of course wordsmithing and other things that would lead you to understanding the intention of the perp or the suspect or whatever you want to call it. Your goal is to find an answer to whatever took place or how that took place or whatever. So
Mhm.
you were so caught up into a method that would be so bankrupt in the finite mind, yet you embodied an intuitive state of knowing. That is really profound. And I love hearing stories like that because I had a similar situation where I was, a power lifter and a bodybuilder and a self-proclaimed atheist. And then I turned into a Taoist priest. It happens. This is what the slap in
Right.
the face from the universe giving you, hey, heads up, this direction over here. Follow my
Right.
voice, and I'll teach you what you need to know about yourself. And it's fascinating when you apply these things because when someone is looking, and I think the biggest issue that most people have today is they get energetically sensitive, but they have no real definition of information. So they're like,
Mhm.
oh, I feel all this energy and all this. And this is what you get caught, what I call the bite of the spiritual dragon. And you're forever chasing it. Oh, I had a vision. I heard grandma. I had a vivid dream. I can hear voices. I can see dead people. And that's one little facet of an excess or deficiency within your sensory perception. And people leave it at that. They run with it these days. They're like, oh, I can see aliens. And then they start up a YouTube channel and they go on about that. And then, oh, I can train people in this program. And then they do the program and they're information seekers because more and more information is sought to find the answer to what you already know. Yet you keep pursuing it. Another workshop, another situation, another, programming and training and whatever. And that's just what I call the point of no return and diminished return because people will keep using their finite mind to find the answer. That's the perplexing part instead of realizing they already have it. But it's not to dismiss the journey because you and I have had our own journey to get there. And many people, I always tell people, look, if you dumb it down to neuroplasticity, you can find that if everything I say to you resonates, your ability to replicate it is instantaneously using what we call mirror neurons. This is the group think and the effect of mass healing. So the biggest healing scenario I ever had was 1,000 people at once. Someone came in with whatever they have, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual issues, and they all walk away with profound healings because there is a consensus of what it is that people are looking for. We're all coming together for this one moment of unification, and it's profound, the visceral kinesthetic somatic response, and then furthermore the evidence. Oh, this healed. I couldn't see, I couldn't stand, I had this. All of it just happens at once, and you're like,
Mhm.
wow, this is the magic we're talking about, unified state.
Mhm.
And furthermore, you can repeat it here on the interweb and social sphere through that digital divinity. It's all the same, whether you're here in front of me or 1,000 miles away, the evidence will be shown to you. But, um, this is the excitement of that journey and the ability to remember.
The ability to remember, absolutely. Yeah, I people try to utilize the finite mind to create a problem or to solve a problem that it in itself created, and then that doesn't really work out well. So, the finite mind is the source of many of our issues, most of them probably. So, using that to solve those problems is a fool's errand, I guess. It
It's
really
that
is.
that you grasp for it and it disappears. This is the
Hmm.
problem. A lot of
Hmm.
spiritual training and energetic teaching is until you can create an actual uh, ability to harness that resonance. It's transitory. It's not a permanent.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so, you have to detach to attach. And then you
Hmm.
become the present moment. And then all of a sudden, every thought, feeling, and emotion, any event is commandeered by your dominion of this state. because you are now the present moment. You're not a place, person, or thing. You're not the distant healer or an expression of God. You have none of those things. To witness a healing is now. And so that ability comes in the substance. It's like what people would call, some of my parapsychologist friends, psychokinesis.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting evidence of this. Precognition is where you're feeling it viscerally before it takes place. You're like, holy crap, what is this? All these things are evident based. And I think that you and I have the same view on this. These are great things, but I'm not going to sit there and have like 20 scientists sit there and poke and prod me to get the answers of whether I'm reading people telepathically, or all that kind of nonsense. I've seen it for decades. It's a constant. It is. I share it. I teach it, and a lot of the evidence-based, scientific evidence-based people, I get a little tired of them because they don't show it themselves, yet they're looking for it and they see it, but then they're like, hang on, I experienced the healing. I had a migraine, it's gone. But how did that work? That's not important how it worked. It just worked. Can you embrace it? Can you be grateful instead of going, I had a migraine for 6 years and all of a sudden, just standing in the resonance that you shared with me, my migraine's gone. But instead of going, oh my goodness, I'm so grateful that it's gone, it's like, well, how did that work? And then the bankruptcy of the finite mind. What is it? What's the definition of insanity? Repeating this same thing over and over again, expecting a different response, a different outcome. This is the delusion of the finite mind. Mm-hmm. And I think it's so fantastic that you have all these incredible tools that you've taken and gathered over your lifetime, and you've integrated them into, what we call, intuitive knowing. As you put it, knowing. I know. I don't need to work out how it is. I just know. And that's that aha epiphany that everyone loves to have. It's like, I feel what Kathleen is saying. I know what she is saying is true because I can experience it.
Right. That's it. It is that level of understanding that you just know. And I love that you touched on gratitude. That's so important. Gratitude is so important. The individual whose migraine disappeared as if by magic, but instead of saying thank you, I feel so much better. It's like, wait a minute, how did that work? What did you do? Right?
I've had so many times where you bring the resonance, and I've literally had people like torn rotator cuff, gone. And then they spend 6 months attempting to tear it again because they just cannot handle the resonance of it. It's just too much for their finite mind. But that's the very problem.
Yes. And I know that I feel that gratitude, we hear a lot about that these days too, gratitude. But I think to really be in gratitude instead of just talking about it is immensely healing. Being in gratitude, I always say living in gratitude, and gratitude is my personal spiritual ideal and has been for many years. And it continues, it grows constantly, it evolves. I continue to find new energies around gratitude and how it manifests in my life and how I experience gratitude in my everyday life. But I do know that, and of course it's a love emotion. If it's an emotion, I'm not sure, but it's a love energy. It's in that higher frequency of love, and feeling gratitude brings so many rewards. It's, again, one of the things I talk to clients about. Yeah, I'm thankful. Yeah, I know I have a good life. Yeah, okay. But how does that show up for you? And you can really get into the weeds with people about things like this. And that's actually one of my favorite things to do because you never know where it's going to lead. You talked about having an organic conversation, and I was like, oh, yippee, because that's kind of the way I work as well. I have a loose structure, but it's not very structured. It flows. I allow it to flow. So the energy flows, right? And the same is for gratitude. I don't try to box it in. I don't try to define it, name it, label it. It's a huge presence in my life, and I am grateful for gratitude.
The self-realized epiphanies, I just love this. I mean, this conversation today has been so refreshing, and it just furthermore reinforces the knowing that people come to when they embark on the what we call the Taoist rites, the seeking to go from a seeker to a knower through the self-evidence. Your truth is the only truth you need to be concerned with, and
Right.
absolute truth is validated by your experience. And all this other stuff, a lot of authoritarians will be very concerned by that proclamation, but the truth is that is the truth, and it can only be realized by you, not by me, not by Kathleen, by you, the seeker. And the truth will reveal itself, and true levels of ascension will come in that form where you want for nothing. You are just selfless and in servitude. And this conversation today has been magical.
Yes, it has been, and I thank you for the opportunity to have it. I truly do.
Yes, yes. And I'm going to put under this podcast your social sphere and interweb where people can find you. I want everyone to go out and experience what Kathleen is speaking of from a wisdom teaching, including, I imagine, if you'd like to share with the audience, you offer one-on-one sessions, training. Share with them what the path of what you're sharing.
Now I focus on the one-on-one sessions, the individuals. That was my guidance when COVID became a thing, and I could no longer see people in person for all the reasons why. And I actually, or teach, I could teach online, but I much prefer in-person teaching. I just love the energy, and yeah. So I was seriously considering retirement at that time, because it's like, now what do I do, right? So I was guided not to, and I went ahead and I just shifted completely over to distant work, remote work. And I have to say, it's been a wonderful, wonderful shift. First of all, the clients are safe and comfortable in their own homes or where they choose to be. And I am privileged to work with people all over the world. There's no barrier because of time or space, truly. And I have met so many amazing souls along the way across the world. And I could not have done it had I not shifted into that space of opening up when we were in that pandemic time. So there's a lot that can be said about that time, which is probably for another conversation. But it that's what I do now. I decided to step away from teaching based on my guides. They were like, you need to focus on people. This is what people need right now. They need that individual focus. And also because we are in this time of great change, massive change on planet Earth, more and more people are looking for answers. They are looking for something beyond their human selves. They know it's something there, but they don't know what. So more and more people are awakening. They are looking. They are seeking. I want to be present for them always. So I focus on one-to-one sessions. I offer a variety of Reiki sessions, different types, whatever appeals to the individual. I offer spiritual guidance and mentoring. I work with crystals in almost all my sessions, always. They're amazing allies. And I very much keep in mind the needs and the energy of each individual. Again, organic, right? I have their truth, their experience is their experience. It's not mine. Their journey is their journey. It's not mine. So I keep that in mind at all times, and I tailor my work with them accordingly, because one size does not fit all. It just does not in this case. So I'm very cautious to meet people where they are and help them to remember who they are.
Oh, I love that. I love that. In closing, my dear friend, I'm going to ask you one last question. What is your definition of spiritual consciousness?
Ooh, that's a big question. Spiritual consciousness, I guess we've already talked about this, is for me, it's remembrance of yourself, remembrance of who you are, and then living your life accordingly as a unified being.
I love that. I've done hundreds, probably over 400 podcasts. I've never got the same answer, as I should not.
Okay.
As we are
you're
all
right.
facets, we are all facets of that diamond of perfection.
Exactly. So
Muted state of realization. I love it. Absolutely love it. I want to thank you, my dear friend, for spending the time with me today and sharing your wisdom teaching. And furthermore, I, offer the contemplation more so. I am suggesting, and for all my students, disciples, 126s, and subscribers, it's a whole different ballgame. I want them all to go out and experience Kathleen's offerings and really look into that. You are me, I am you. It's about awakening your truth and your remembrance and your self-realization. So thank you, my dear friend.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel like I have made a friend, and I greatly, greatly appreciate the opportunity to be here and to meet you and to have this conversation.
It's a beautiful commune between two energies that are self-realized as one, and anyone witnessing or experiencing this conversation will know that to be true. So with that, I want to thank you. I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. I want to thank the universe for bringing you into my life, vice versa. And I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master San Qing. And I'll see you in the next one, guys.